Good evening. I want to welcome you to another segment of the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. Today is November the 19th, 2024. This is probably going to be my last video before the Thanksgiving Day weekend or Thanksgiving Day. Um, it's going to be like my first Thanksgiving Day without Sean, since I've known him. I miss the brother, that was my guy, you know. And so I'm a little sentimental about that. But today's topic, and anybody who's been in a plane crash, please forgive me for using this analogy, but the Jets plane has officially crashed in this season. Um, we today the Jets fired their GM Joe Douglas, fired their GM Joe Douglas after 7 weeks after firing Robert Saleh, the head coach. This season has been an unmitigated disaster by any stretch of the imagination. And, I got problems with the New York media, particularly Mike Francesa. And I'm a fan of Mike. I like Mike. But sometimes I don't know if it's old age or he's off his rocker or what it is. And I'm certain he got, statisticians in his, with this podcast, in his group of people, whatever you want to call it, um, his producers or whatever. I'm certain that these people understand history because why do I have an issue with Mike Francesa? Because he wants to blame Woody Johnson for the fall of the Jets because of the Jets season because of the way he fired Robert Saleh. Now, what Mike Francesa called, and a lot of other Jets, I mean, not Jets, New York media people called for the firing of Robert Saleh. Now, if you go back in history, history tells you anytime in the NFL, anytime a coach gets fired in season, that team is usually not going to do well. Matter of fact, only two times in history, two times in the history of the NFL, which goes back decades, has an interim head coach. That means the head coach gets fired in season, and the interim head coach helps lead that team to the playoffs. The latest case was 2021 with the Las Vegas Raiders when they fired John Gruden and elevated interim coach and special teams coach Basaccia, I think that's pronounce his name, only to get rid of him at the end of the season after he took the team to the playoffs and the team wanted them to hire him as the full-time head coach. But that wasn't good enough. But that's the last example or the most recent example. Now, why do I say this? Because he's trying to still sell. Oh, yeah, you were supposed to get rid of Robert Saleh. It was the right thing to do, but you did it the wrong way. Well, what do you mean did it the wrong way, Mike? Well, what good way is there to get rid of Robert Saleh and still keep the team afloat? He says today, after announcing that Joe Douglas was fired, he says today, well, if you would have fired him but brought in an outside head coach and a coordinator, offensive coordinator, you could have still saved this season. What is this man smoking? Is he crazy? History tells you that doesn't happen. Not only that, in the NFL, folks, a team that did that, where they fired a head coach in season and brought in an outsider, someone who was not on the staff currently, and brought him in to coach out the remainder of that season, was a few years ago with the Indianapolis Colts. Okay? And a lot of people thought the owner was then off his rockers because you just don't do that. When you fire the coach, you elevate one of the interim coaches or assistant coaches or coordinators or whatever. And usually you would, if you fire a coaching season, the easiest thing to do and the cleanest way to do it would be to elevate the special teams coach. Because if you're firing a coaching season, usually it's both the offense and defense not doing their jobs. That has failed the team is why you're firing the coaching season. And so you don't want to elevate the coordinator who's on the offending side. So if it's the offensive that's not doing their job, you don't want to elevate the offensive coordinator to the head coach. And if it's the defensive side that's letting you down, you don't want to elevate the defensive coordinator to the head coach. Well, the one thing that was keeping the Jets afloat the first 4 or 5 games was their defense. Even though it wasn't great, it was still good by NFL standards. Oh, excuse me. So when you fired Robert Saleh, of course things was going to get worse because you elevated the defensive coordinator. So now that's taking the defensive coordinator away from the defensive room. And now he has to coach the entire team, something he has no experience in. And he's shown to not having no experience in. So then now Frances is complaining, oh, you did the wrong thing. Come on, Mike. Mike. There was no scenario, and I mean no scenario, where firing Robert Saleh in season was going to work out for the Jets positively. Because history tells you it doesn't happen. History tells you it does not happen. You might get a 1 or 2 game bump for firing the coach, but they're going to go back to playing like they did before why the coach got fired. There's a reason the coach got fired in season or the team did not perform well. So you say, okay, Jermaine, where would you lay the blame at for this troubled season? Folks, this season got troubled before the first game. See, it's bad enough Aaron Rodgers isn't the guy he once was. Remember, he just came off an Achilles injury. The man is going on 41 years old. And in football years, that's old. It is what it is, folks. In football years, that's old. But here's the thing. Don't you find it very coincidental? And I don't usually like to blame a player for a lot of players having a poor season. But there are particular circumstances where you could pretty much pinpoint the blame. Don't you find it coincidental that the Jets' young core, their 4 young core, okay, Brees Hall, the running back, Garrett Wilson, the wide receiver, Sauce Gardner, the cornerback. Oh, and they got rid of the 4th guy, Huff. They got rid of him. So really, their 3 core guys is all having a terrible season all at the same time. Now, everybody has a down season by their standards. That happens. But when all your key guys is having a down season at the same time, there's usually a reason why. Something, and I'm going to use a line that my cousin Sean used to say, it's not cleaning the milk. Something is not cleaning the milk. So what could it be? Well, funny thing is, Mike Williams comes to the Jets this year. Now he's not a Hall of Fame wide receiver or anything like that, but he's really, really good. You know, he had a really good career. But he's kind of on the older side. And he's a little bit expensive, but the Jets say, okay, we'll bring him in for 1 year to help out to give Aaron Rodgers more weapons. So there was a play the Jets was playing Um, I want to say New England. No, it wasn't New England. Sorry, it wasn't New England. The Jets was playing against Buffalo. That's who it was. I forgot the team they were playing against. It was against Buffalo at home. Mike Williams is running down the side open. Aaron Rodgers underthrows him. Underthrew him. Clear Aaron Rodgers underthrew him. Now he's trying to come back to the football. He slips and falls, trying to come back to the football. And by the way, Mike Francesa blamed him for slipping and falling. Like that was like he purposely slipped and fall. Like Mike, those things do happen. Players slip and fall. People slip and fall. To fault a guy for slipping and falling, that happens. But he slipped and fell, and the defender picks off the football, which was a great play by the defender, by the way. After the game, Aaron Rodgers in the media does what Aaron Rodgers always does: point fingers. Instead of just simply saying, I didn't play well, which he didn't, and this is on me, I got to do a better job and yada yada. No. Well, Mike Williams, he didn't run the route the way he was supposed to run the route, and he wants to blame Mike Williams. He wants to blame Mike Williams for the interception. Boy, talk about lack of leadership. Now, I'm gonna tell you something. If I was Mike, he's lucky that was Mike Williams he said that about. Because if he would have said that about me, and come to find out, guess who sent Mike Williams the statements? His own teammates. Saying, listen to what Aaron Rodgers said about you. Oh, if I was Mike Williams, I would never have allowed Aaron Rodgers to get away with that. Because I would have came out and says, okay, since he wants to get into some truth telling, I remember one time in wrestling, and just follow me for a minute because you'll see why I went here. Stephanie McMahon and Triple H was humiliating the Big Show. They had him knocking out old people like the old Dusty Rhodes and old oh my God, he was just knocking out people who were once great in the sport, and Harley Race and even old women and stuff. So they had him doing some humiliating things. So one time, The Miz is in the ring, and he said, Big Show, why are you allowing them to do this to you? If they can get away with doing this to you, they can get away with doing this to anyone else. You, the biggest thing out here, you need to stand up to them and stand up to that using them. He pretty much used the B word referring to Stephanie. And the next thing I know, her music hits. I said, oh, wow, I know what's getting ready to happen here. So Stephanie steps into the ring and she says, oh, so Miz, we want to get into truth telling, huh? Okay, here's some truth telling. When we want to do a promotion in some foreign country, guess who we call? You. When we want to do X, Y, and Z, some radio TV show, who do we call to do it? You. You know one of the worst things to happen? You peak too soon. That's one of the worst things that can happen to an athlete is when you peak too soon. Like, in other words, you're worthless. That's basically what she was telling him. And then she looked at the Big Show and said, Big Show, knock him out. And Big Show knocked out the Miz. I love that segment. Like, yo, watch who you talking to. Now, why did I bring that up? Because if Aaron Rodgers would have said that about me, what he said about Mike Williams, oh, there was going to be some truth telling coming from me. And here's how I would have done it. Listen, the New York media can kiss your rear end because why? They're so desperate for good quarterback play, they'll accept anything coming from you. I will not. I don't give a damn because you're a Hall of Famer. You're a first ballot Hall of Famer. Yes, you're a first ballot Hall of Famer, not here in New York. You're a first ballot Hall of Famer in freaking Green Bay, Wisconsin, where there's very few media members and everybody going to celebrate you because you're great. So no one's going to call you out for your nonsense. But if you want to talk about why this team is struggling, why we're losing games that we should be winning, we should go. The reason is because we have a lack of leadership coming from key players. That so-called key player called by the name of Aaron freaking Rodgers. When you decided to take your behind on a trip to Egypt, which great, I would love to go to Egypt, but not during training camp. When training camp is around, everybody is there except for you. You're in Egypt. But yet you're supposed to be the leader. And then you wonder why everyone, Sauce Gardner, now I'm not going to say this part, but I would just simply say, and you wonder why we're struggling as a team. Because no one really respects your leadership. That's why you can talk to you blue in the face and we'll just roll our eyes like, yeah, whatever. Why don't you show up to camp like any other responsible quarterback and leader would, and maybe we would be more on the same page. Or I would have went off, and I would have made it public since you decided to make it public by calling me out. Remember, when you point the fingers, 3 is pointing back at you. Oh, and then get me off of this damn team. I don't want to play another down with this guy. Get me out of here. And I'd rather not play another down in the NFL than to play with this man. Who is he? He's great at pointing fingers when things don't go right, even if he's one of the reasons why they're not going right. That's when the Jets season was doomed. And no coach coming in was going to fix that. Because you made Robert Saleh look like a punk, made him look small when he's over in Egypt while everyone else here is in Florham Park. And when the media says, well, why is Aaron Rodgers' absence excused? Now, what was Robert Saleh supposed to say? If he says yes, now he loses credibility in the locker room. But he says no, now he loses credibility with the media and with Aaron Rodgers. Because why? His absence was not excused. We need you here in camp. That's not something Brady or Manning or any other responsible quarterback would have done. They would have handled that business before training camp or even after training camp, but before preseason started. In other words, Aaron Rodgers finds out when camp and stuff and OTAs, and then he schedules his events around that. Or not around that, but he schedules his events on those same days. Don't you find he did that in Green Bay? And yeah, you can get away with it in Green Bay because, again, Green Bay is going to accept that he did because it's a small town. And you are a legend there because you won and you're a 4-time MVP. So no one's going to complain in Green Bay. But you don't have that same cachet here in New York. And then everybody's wondering why the Jets are struggling, particularly on the offense, and why all of our young players is having a down season all at the same time. I'm willing to bet you it had a lot to do with that trip. And how do I know that I am telling the truth? Because when Mike Williams got to Pittsburgh, he got traded to Pittsburgh, right? Either before the trade deadline or on the trade deadline. At the trading deadline, I don't exactly remember the exact timing of it, but then he caught a key touchdown pass to help win a game. And he was so happy. And then he let it be known after the game that there's a big difference of attitude in the Pittsburgh locker room compared to that of the Jets. And that he was happy to be catching passes from Russell Wilson. And Russell Wilson is a great player, or once was a great player, and he also is maybe a future Hall of Famer. Now, not on the level of Aaron Rodgers, because Russell Wilson don't have no MVPs. Aaron Rodgers got 4. But what does he tell you? I'd rather catch passes from from Russell Wilson than Aaron Rodgers. And here's another reason why I know that what I'm saying is correct. Do you know that the Jets offense, Garrett Wilson, was better under Zach Wilson than Aaron Rodgers? But the media wants to blame Garrett Wilson. Why aren't you on the same page as Aaron Rodgers? Why aren't you running the routes he wants you to run? See, the media in New York is kissing this man's rear end. You're doing what Woody and the see. The biggest mistake Woody made was not bringing in Aaron Rodgers. I understand why you brought in Aaron Rodgers, but it was the way you did it. See, it's the big when people make mistakes, it's not because of what they did. It's sometimes most of the time it's the way you do something. When you set the whole contingency, including the janitors and the cooker, the chefs and everybody out to California, wherever part of California Aaron Rodgers is in, to woo him to come to New York, what did you was telling him? You going to give him carte blanche. He can do whatever he wants. Just please come to. You came off as desperate. And the one thing people don't like is someone who's desperate. Because why? Now can take advantage of you. And that's generally what's going to happen. When your person is desperate, the other person is going to take advantage of you. That's going to happen. So all Aaron Rodgers is doing is what you allowed him to do. What Green Bay would not allow him to do. And Green Bay, that's the reason why Green Bay is a well-ran organization. Because they still, the Rodgers know there are limits to what you can do. Here, Woody said there's no limits. That's where Woody messed up. That's where Woody screwed up. And if you was going to let go Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas, the time to have did that was last year. But once you decide to come back, roll it back one more year, well, then now you have to go the full year with it. And so when you decide to fire him in the earlier season, I said, all right, I understand why you're doing it. But I'm not surprised the Jets season tanked the way it did. But people here in New York are shocked. And now a lot of them are saying, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't have fired Robert Saleh. You think? He was the one keeping the glue holding this together. And by firing Robert Saleh, you actually accomplished two things that you made yourself look even worse. But here's the two things you've accomplished. Number one, you made him a sympathetic figure because it wasn't just that you fired him, it was when you did it and the way you did it. Where you didn't even allow him to speak to the team. You had security escort him out the door. You don't do that. That's a disrespect. So now a lot of former coaches and a lot of coaches and a lot of players around the league did not take too kindly to that. Oh, and these are guys you're trying to bring to the Jets, by the way. Keep that in mind. So what if you would disrespect Robert Saleh like that, you do this, what would you do to me? See, that's what Woody really screwed up, was how you fired him. I mean, to me, you should have waited to fire him, but it was also the way you did it. And there was nothing that was going to clean that up. There was nothing that was going to help make the Jets situation any better. But here's the second thing you did besides make him a sympathetic figure. The Jets got depreciably worse. They got even worse than they were under Robert Saleh. So now people are saying, well, was Robert Saleh really the problem? Or was the Jets' culture and the Jets the problem? So not only did you make the man into a sympathetic figure, but you somehow, some way made it look as if he wasn't part of the problem. Though he really was, but he wasn't. That's how you made it look. Perception matters, folks. In business, in life, and it matters. That's just the reality. So now, what do the Jets do moving forward? And now, see, here's another problem with this firing. The timing. Because yes, you could go and see, firing a coach in season makes sense for one reason only. it gives you a jump start on looking for a new coach and or new GM when you fire them in season. Because no coach or GM worth their salt wants to interview for a job when they know somebody's already in that job, in that seat. Get rid of the guy first and then come interview with me. That's just how it generally works for the most part. And I understand that. But the one good thing is now by you firing them, you get a jump start on hiring a new GM and head coach. But now here's the problem. Again, timing. Last year would have been the perfect time to do that because last year was a rich quarterback class. You had at least, what, 5 quarterbacks go in the first round, which is like historic. You had Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Bo Nix, okay, Michael Penix, 5 quarterbacks. First round. Historic. That was a rich quarterback class. And if you notice, they're all doing well to some varying degrees, some more than others, but they're all doing well. That class might turn out to be overall the best class to have ever come out from quarterback class to have ever come out in the history of the game. The problem is this year's class, not so much. Outside of Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, there is no other quarterback who's going to come out who's going to get a first-round grade. So that means you're going to have to hit on a quarterback in rounds 2 to 7. But the new administration, the new coach coming in, the new GM coming in, the one thing you better hit on is the quarterback. Because we could talk about Houston last year. We could talk about Washington this year, and those are teams that were really bad who made significant jumps. But what was the one thing that they both have in common besides a new coach? New quarterback, and they got the quarterback right. See, that's the most important part, was that they got the quarterback right. If you don't get the quarterback right, now you're already getting off to a bad start with a team that does have some talent. The Jets are not bereft of talent. The Jets have talent. But now what's going to happen? So now you're going to lose another year, and eventually that talent, you got to pay them. And if you got to pay them, that cuts into your cap space. So it makes it hard when you do find the next quarterback to go ahead and build the team around him that you might want to build. See, now you're stuck here as to how you're going to do this. Because the new coach and new GM doesn't have time. They don't have a year or two to wait. Well, let me wait around for the Arch Manning. What if Arch Manning doesn't come out for another 2 years, which is very much possible? Because his brother didn't come out until he was a senior. I'm talking about not his brother, his uncle. His uncle didn't come out until he was a senior. I'm talking about Peyton Manning. And Eli Manning didn't come out until he was a junior, senior. When he came out of Ole Miss. So there's a good possibility that Arch Manning may play 2 or 3 years in college before he comes out. So you don't know when he's going to come out. So you don't have time as a new administration to wait around for the Arch Manning sweepstakes to say, let's go get Arch Manning. You don't have time for that. So you got to come in and almost hit the ground running to finding a new quarterback, or else you're going to get off to a bad start like the other previous administrations that have failed what the Jets have done. So here's what I would do, and I thought about this. If I am the Jets, let's say I'm the new head coach, new GM. Well, we got to get the quarterback right. And Aaron Rodgers, we don't really want. We want to get Aaron Rodgers out of here. So what we'll do is we'll eat the Aaron Rodgers contract. Sorry, we'll just take the L on that one. Just like when Denver did with Russell Wilson, even though Russell Wilson could still play, but they did that with Russell Wilson. That's what the Giants is getting ready to do with Daniel Jones. Eat the remainder of his contract, but get him off the team. I would do the same thing with Aaron Rodgers. Goodbye, Aaron. See you in retirement. will wish you well in retirement because you didn't do a damn thing for the Jets except cause more misery. So get up out of here. But now I got a hole at the quarterback. I can bring back Tyrod Taylor, but he's a placeholder. And I like him, but he's a placeholder. You're not competing in the AFC with Tyrod Taylor. You're not. Let's just keep it real. We need a team that can get ready to make the playoffs next year. Get this team back on track and make the playoffs next year before these guys start making serious money. So here's what I would do. And I thought about this. I would wait until find out what Pittsburgh going to do. We mean Pittsburgh. Well, see, there's an old theory. When you got two quarterbacks, when people say, "Oh, I got two quarterbacks," that means you got none. Because it's hard to have one quarterback, let alone two. So if you got two quarterbacks, you really got none. Pittsburgh is that rare exception. That rare exception. When they say they got two quarterbacks, they actually do. Now, one is better than the other. One's a future Hall of Famer, while the other one's a young guy who's up and coming. But nonetheless, they got two quarterbacks. Now, they can't pay two quarterbacks. You're not going to pay for two quarterbacks. No team does that. And not only that, they're going to both want to start. So, Russell Wilson's contract, because it's only a one-year deal, so his contract is up at the end of the season. So Pittsburgh has to decide: do they extend Russell Wilson and move Justin Fields, or do they let Russell Wilson walk and keep Justin Fields and sign him to a long-term deal on a team-friendly basis? Pittsburgh is going to have to make that decision. But whatever decision they make, if I'm the Jets, I'm going with the opposite. So if they choose to keep Russell Wilson, I'm going to make a play for Justin Fields. Because at least he'll make you interesting. At least you'll be interesting with him because he can definitely use his legs. And you need somebody who has mobility at that position. So I will go get Justin Fields if they choose to re-sign Russell Wilson. And if they choose to let Russell Wilson walk and go with the cheaper option by re-signing or keeping Justin Fields, I would go and sign Russell Wilson. So whichever way the Steelers go, excuse me, I would go the opposite way. In other words, I'm getting one of those two. That's the play I would make if I'm the new coach and GM of the Jets, because you don't want to come in next year and have a losing season again and be called the same old Jets again. And then now you got to pay the Breece Halls, the Sauce Gardners, and the Garrett Wilsons of the world. Because after next year, you're going to have to start paying them boys. I want to thank you for watching another segment of the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. Have a good evening.